The Dust Bowl, which included parts of Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Colorado, and Kansas, where poor care of the land caused large dust storms to form in the 1930s. This caused a huge conflict between nature and human activity. So dust storms caused people to leave the Dust Bowl and prolonged the Great Depression and ruined people's lives forever. There were many ways the Dust Bowl incident was caused. The Dust Bowl was a natural and man-made disaster. One way the Dust Bowl was created is there was 4 minor droughts that happened, but it's known to be one major drought because people could not recover from the droughts one after another, so it seemed like one long drought, but it was really not. The droughts happened for between 1930 to 1931, 1934, 1936, and 1939 to 1940. The droughts happened in about 100 million acres, affecting 75% of the country in 27 states of the United States of America. During World War I, wheat and corn were in demand, so many people overplowed the land of the Dust Bowl so they could make lots of money. So the deep-rooted grass that was holding the nutrients, water, and dirt together in the Dust Bowl was all gone, so all the nutrients were drained from the ground, so the dirt began to fly up into the air when the storms happened. No one could see the ground getting flown up in front of you, because you could not see anything not like 2 feet in front of you. During World War I, millions of bushels of corn and wheat were needed for all the soldiers, so 1 bushel of wheat was $2 during the war because the demand was so high but the supply was low. After World War I, the supply went up because of all the farmers, and the demand went down because there was not as many soldiers to feed. So 1 bushel went down to 40 cents, which made it not even about profitable. So people had lost quite a lot of money on October 29th, 1929, because all the stocks crashed and investors sold 12,894,650 shares were traded in just the first day. When investors were unsure of the stock market stability, in the first 10 months of 1930, 744 banks had gone bankrupt. So people that invested in the bank had also lost around $140 billion through bank failures during the Dust Bowl time period, which is one of the primary reasons people lost so much money. Because of the companies could not pay as many workers, so more than 30% of the United States workforce was unemployed, so a lot of people had no stable source of income and had lost all their saved money through stocks crashing, banks failing, and no one could find another job because many companies were not hiring because they were all firing because no one could pay any of the workers because the companies had just lost so much money through bank failures and stock crashes. The Dust Bowl is one of the worst environmental disasters in the history of the United States of America. The Dust Bowl has lots of dust storms where huge windstorms carry dust from the ground that was created. There were worse storms called black blizzards, and they brought black dirt into the storms, which turned the color of the storms from tan to black because of all the dirt. One of the worst black blizzards in the history of the Dust Bowl was Black Sunday, and it was on April 14th, 1945. Black Sunday was a day where a black blizzard that was the worst black blizzard in the whole Dust Bowl time rained here on the southern plains of the United States of America. People had to drag metal chains behind their cars because of all the static electricity that the storms had generated. They needed to ground their cars, and that's how they kept their cars in working order. Barbed wire fences emitted blue flame because of fires that started on the fences in effect of all the static electricity in the storms that had generated. Elderly and children were at risk most to die from suffocation in the dust storms, but they weren't because they were the weakest. That does not mean grown men and women could not suffocate, but it was more likely for an elderly to die in the storm or kids. When kids went to school, they had to wear dust masks because they were at high risk to suffocate if a storm came through. Although the bad conditions during the Dust Bowl, many people that lived during the Dust Bowl time in the Dust Bowl stayed in the Dust Bowl, although quite a few moved, because finding another job in another place was really hard during the Great Depression. The disaster was so bad that red snow started to fall in New England because of the natural disaster known as the Dust Bowl. The storms were known to be the worst natural disaster in even the world. The dust storms caused huge discomfort in people's lives because they had to spend quite a lot of time cleaning out all the dust in their houses and living spaces. The dust storms happened around once a week on average. The Dust Bowl name was created by a news reporter named Robert Geiger. The Dust Bowl was happening during the Great Depression, so no one had much money because they was all lost in stock market crashes and bank failures. The Dust Bowl refers to the drought-stricken and suffering plains of the United States, which suffered severe dust storms during a dry period in the 1930s. Occasionally, the dust storms swept completely across the country to the East Coast. 250 people fled to the Dust Bowl, although most stayed. Cattle would die in suffocation, and half of the land of the Dust Bowl was destroyed. 6,500 people were killed in just 1 year of the Dust Bowl, trying to jump on trains or just couldn't find a job and just died out. The Dust Bowl happened again in the 1950s, called the Filthy 50s. The Dust Bowl was known as the Dirty 30s. During World War I, millions of bushels of corn and wheat were sold, and the land had run dry of resources. So that's how the Dust Bowl was created. 850 million tons of topsoil blew away in 1985 alone. The dust reflected the sunlight back into space, which created cooler temperatures, which cuts away from the water supply. The Dust Bowl was affected heavily during the Great Depression. The Dust Bowl also made the Great Depression last longer because the government had to split time and resources between the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. So the Dust Bowl took some of the government's time and resources, so the Great Depression and Dust Bowl both lasted longer. The people and the land were scarred forever because of all the years of the dust storms and droughts that had happened in the plains to lose 75% of their topsoil, which ruined lots of farms and farmland. The government helped to end the Great Depression by helping farmers preserve the nutrients in the ground by teaching them new agricultural practices that are still used today. The end of the Great Depression helped end the Dust Bowl, as people had more money and the U.S. economy regained its strength. People that were living during the Dust Bowl now had problems because their farms and farmland were destroyed because of the Dust Bowl. Kids had to sacrifice their education to help their family in a time of crisis to get money. And now they could spend more time trying to gain knowledge, but they'd never get those years back that they lost. Went down in high erosion countries by 28%, and medium erosion counties went down by 17%. The Dust Bowl, which included parts of Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Colorado, and Kansas, where poor care of the land caused large dust storms to form in the 1930s. This caused a huge conflict between nature and human activity. So dust storms caused people to leave the Dust Bowl and prolong the Great Depression and ruin people's lives forever.